Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't really know, it doesn't really matter. Welcome to the first edition of the Hoodie Files, the lectures that you're going to be able to watch at home. I call it the Hoodie Files because, frankly, this is the one class where you can wear your hoodie. I am wearing a hoodie to celebrate it. Just to show you how much of a rebel I'm going to be, I'm going to go ahead and put on a ball cap indoors, something I would never normally do, completely forbidden in class. If you'd like to chew gum, this is the day to do it. If you'd like to eat some food and not worry about the cockroach invasion, also completely allowable. I have a timer here so that I can tell exactly how long this lecture is going to last. We're going to keep it under 10 minutes, so that makes a good little video. And this is your homework tonight, is to watch this video and learn a little bit about the MLA style basics, the style that you'll be using for your research papers and the ones you're writing right now with your oral history projects as well. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question to really look at is just, what is the MLA style? I've got a couple of things here on the screen for you to think about. MLA just stands for Modern Language Association. That's just the name of the group. You could find a style manual. There's several other types of style manuals. This is the one that you'll use the most commonly during your high school career, during your college career, especially if you're in the liberal arts, English, history, anything social studies, philosophy, anything like that. Basically, though, all it is a paper format. It's a way of making your paper look, has certain technicalities in terms of the style, the margins, the type of font, things like that. But it's also a way to cite all of your sources, to give credit where credit is due for information that you get from other professionals. Why do we use MLA? Why do you use any style? Because it makes it easier on your reader. That's the ultimate goal, is to make it easier for your reader, not just to read your paper, but to navigate your paper, to really understand where your ideas are coming from, what are your own ideas and what are other people's ideas, and also allow people to follow the sources that you have cited in their own research. They read your paper, it sparks an interesting question for them, and then they turn to your sources to get their own ideas, okay? And finally, it establishes your credibility. In high school level, it says, look, I'm credible as a student. I'm doing the work. I'm showing you what work is not my own. I am trying my very best to make sure that I'm not stealing ideas from other people. But outside of the high school level, it establishes your credibility as a scholar. It says that you understand the research method and you understand that there are people who have done work on these topics before, and this is where you're setting yourself apart. So we'll get into some of the basics of the citation, and I want you to think about what I've got on the screen. Citation is always in the background. It's something that the readers should be able to see but not focus on unless they need to. If you do it properly, citation is not going to be in the front of your paper. It's going to be kind of in the background, where it's the sub notes, I guess, that you would hear behind the music, to get a really bad analogy. So the first thing is, let's talk about the difference between a works cited page and a bibliography. A works cited page is a smaller version of a bibliography. Bibliography is like all of the books you could use, all of the things that you maybe have read, whether you quote them or use them precisely or specifically or not. Works cited, however, are the actual books that you pull quotes from. If you were Harry Potter, picture on the right, the whole library could be your bibliography as you go off to fight he who shall not be named, okay? But you might pull specific books off the shelf, a book on potions, a book on evil spells, and use those exact things. The works cited is the more specific and the more commonly used form that you're going to be using on your research papers. When you look at the works cited basics, you've got a couple of things. It is its own page. It has its 1-inch margins. It uses the same font as the rest of your paper, okay? You are also going to, in the very middle of the page, the very middle of the top of the line, have your works cited right there as if it was the title of a brand new paper, but this is just the last page of your paper. Each work that you're going to use is going to get indented after the first line, so it's the exact opposite of a normal paragraph, and I have an example coming up in a few minutes. The most important thing that you'll remember is that you always refer to a style guide. Again, we're using MLA style right now. Your style guide, you have the Write books, you have several online resources, but when you get to college, you may have a different style guide. You may have a professor that wants you to use the Chicago manual or the APA manual. All of these things are generally made clear to you, and they're in their own book that is a style guide book. Here's an example of a works cited page and what I mean by indenting, okay? If you look, and I'll use the mouse here to give you the pointer, if you look everything comes up to the left-hand side of the page. You have a 1-inch margin. Okay, these are here in a different color because they wouldn't actually appear on your paper. 1-inch margin on your top, author's name, that's your name, Jones, Smith, whatever. The page of your paper, which of a 4-page paper, this would be number 4. And then each works cited has its own little line. Last name, first name, here's the title of this book, here's the date, here's some of the publishing information, here's the date that it was republished, reprinted. Okay, there are different entries for journals, different entries for books. If it's a book by the same author, it uses these little 3M dashes right there. Follett wrote this book, Follett wrote this book. All sorts of different examples for all sorts of different books. And this is where the style manual comes into play. If you're using the Write manual, you'll see that for every different kind of source, whether it's a CD-ROM or a book or a journal article, for every different kind of source, there's an exactly different kind of information that you're going to use. You're going to have a publisher's name, or maybe you won't have a publisher's name. Maybe it has a website, a journal site, something like this. Maybe there's a website name. If it's a musical album, there'll be a musical album name. I mean, anything that you could possibly use in a paper, there is a way to document it, and that's where it becomes very important for you to have a style manual. So always refer to that. But this is a basic example of what it's supposed to look like. Okay, so it looks like every other page of your paper. Now, when you get to the next step, which is the in-text citations, these are the things that are in the actual writing as you do it. Okay, they're called parenthetical citations. That's right here. The reason is because all of your sources are going to be in parentheses. Okay, now what you actually put in the parentheses, of course, depends on what type of source it is. If it's a book, maybe there's an author. If it's a website, maybe there's not an author. What type of work it is, and how it's cited on the works cited page. So it all ties back to exactly how you mention it the first time, the works cited page, and that's how it gets pictured inside of your research paper. All of the citations have to match the works cited page, but they generally are going to use what I'm calling, and what you'll see in style manuals, referred to as the author page style. That means that if you might have a sentence that says something like, Jones says, and his quote is, use the author page style, in which case you simply have the page number. This is the page from Jones's book. Jones's book would be clearly noted on the works cited page. Or you might have a sentence that says, always use the author page style, which is right here. The quote is author page style. Since you didn't say Jones, you would say parentheses, Jones 13. And that person, the reader, would go back to your works cited page and they would see Jones's name, page 13. They would know that's where I can find that quote. Regardless of what you're doing, Jones, whoever he is, will be clearly marked in the works cited page. So don't leave any room for your reader to guess. Okay? Now, the basic thing I'll fill in here is, if you're going to have to choose between using an actual quote or just paraphrasing the quote, always ask yourself, is this a really good quote? Is this better than anybody has ever said it before? Or is it something that I can better just put in my own words, make it shorter, and then use this style of citation? Regardless, make sure that you've cited it so that you're not accidentally plagiarizing. Other resources that you have in your handbook, or I guess in your tool chest, are to look at other style manuals. Like I said, MLA has its own style manual. You could buy several different copies from Amazon.com. You could find several different copies online. Many universities have their own website devoted to MLA style, specifically so that their students have continual access to the exact format that they want them to use. Okay. You, as Flint Hill students, should all have access to the book Write. That's a book that I believe you purchased your freshman year. That has all of the stylistic manual information that you need. You could do a simple web search. Put MLA style in your Google tab, and then you get things like this. This is what I used, was the Purdue Online Writing Labs from Purdue University. It's abbreviated OWL, OWL, and that's purely an MLA style guide that they've put online. Here's the link if you want to go ahead and use it straight from here. That would be completely applicable, and everything that you would get there would absolutely work for you on these basic citation papers. And the number one rule that I always want you to remember is, when in doubt, cite it out. It's always going to be better to have somebody tell you to take some of your citations out because you have too many, than it would be to have a teacher call you in and say, why didn't you cite this paper, and how do I know you're not plagiarizing? So if you have any doubt at all, make sure you put the citation in, even if you feel like you're oversighting it and there's too many citations. That's always better than underciting it and having not enough. Okay? So, if there are any questions, you certainly know how to get me by email, or you will see me tomorrow or the next day in class. That's certainly appropriate. And if you look at the time, I have kept it to under 10 minutes as I promised, and this is the end of Hoody File Edition 1. Thank you very much.